Hey guys, hope you're having a great day. Over the last couple weeks, we have been talking about the nature of Scripture as a story, as a true story of the whole world. And we said that the first kind of act or scene in the story of Scripture is creation. And throughout various lessons last week, we looked at different Psalms and different passages of Scripture that talk about God's work of creation. But we have not yet looked at Genesis 1 and 2. And so today you're going to look at those passages. But before you do, I want to take a few moments to give some context. And I think anytime we read Scripture, I think it's good to ask kind of three questions. What does the text say about who God is? That's one of the main primary purposes of Scripture, is to tell us who is God, what is the nature of God. So what does the text teach us about God? What does the text teach us about the world? And what does the text teach us about who we are as people? And so, over the first few minutes here of class, I would like you to kind of walk through this passage. You have a handout in which I would like you to take some notes as I walk through. So the first thing is this: what is Genesis 1 and 2? What does the creation account tell us about who God is? And I think we could say that there are at least four things that the creation account tells us about God. The first thing is this: that God is eternal. Eternal means that he has no beginning and he has no end. The creation account begins, Genesis 1 verse 1, by saying, "In the beginning, God." God created the heavens and the earth. It doesn't tell us about when God began. It simply assumes that. So the first thing is this: God is eternal. The second thing that Genesis 1 and 2 tells us about who God is that there's only one God. There are not multiple gods, there's not 1,000 gods, there's only one God. So first, God is eternal. Two, there's only one God. The third thing it says is that he is king over creation. We'll talk about more of this when I get back later in this week. But there's a real strong sense that Genesis 1 and 2 show that God is king and that he's establishing his kingdom. So he's eternal, there's only one, and God is a king. And the final thing that the creation account tells us about God is that he is powerful. He's powerful over all of creation, and yet he's personal. He knows us. In Genesis 1 and 2, you'll hear God talking with and walking with Adam and Eve. So he's powerful to create all things, and yet he's personal. So God is eternal, he's one, he's a king, and he's powerful, but personal. The second thing, or the second question we ask is, what does a text say about the world? What does the creation account to proclaim about God's world? Three things we'll say very briefly. That the world is good. Over and over and over again, you'll hear in Genesis 1 and 2 that when God creates something, he says, it is good. So the first thing is, it is good. Creation, or this world, is good. The second thing is this: that God creates by his word. He simply speaks things into being according to Genesis 1 and 2. We'll talk more about what that looks like. But creation, this world, is ordered by God's word, or by his word, I should say. And the third thing is that this world is God's kingdom. This is where God rules. He's king over this place, so we call this world his kingdom. So three things. This world is good. It is created by his word. And this world is God's kingdom. The third thing we want to talk about is, what does creation account, what does this text, Genesis 1 and 2, tell us about who we are? And primarily it says this about who we are. We are made in the image of God. So it says that we are in the image of God. Now, We'll talk a bit more about what this means to be made in the image of God when I get back, but I want to at least mention 4 things up front. So if Genesis 1 and 2 tells us that we are made in the image of God, there are 4 things that means. 1, that we're made for relationship with God. We're meant to be in relationship with the one who created us. A second thing that this means is that we are meant to be in relationship with others. We see this when God says that He made us male and female. We're meant to be in relationship with others. The third thing that this means is that we are meant to be in relationship with creation. We are to take care of it. We are to have dominion over it. We'll talk about again what that means later on this week. And the final thing that being made in the image of God means is that we're meant to be in a right relationship with ourselves. That we are to see ourselves not too arrogantly, not filled with pride, but nor are we to think of ourselves too lowly. We should have a right relationship with ourselves. So, Genesis 1 and 2 tells us about who God is, that He's eternal, that He's one, that He's king, that He's powerful but personal. Genesis 1 and 2 tells us some things about what the world is, that it is good, that it's created by His word, that His kingdom. And Genesis 1 and 2 tells us about who we are. We are made in the image of God. And at least what that means are 4 things. That we are meant to be in relationship with God, we're meant to be in relationship with others, and we are meant to be in relationship with creation or with nature. And we're meant to have a right relationship with ourselves as well. That gives us a framework for us to read Genesis 1 and 2. Your task for the rest of class period is to read that, to read it carefully, to look for new insights in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, to take note of those. You'll see those on your handout. And then we'll look at these notes a bit more carefully when I get back on Wednesday and Thursday. Hope you have a great day.